A talk show that cuts to the truth, no matter how painful it might be, and no BS. Citizen Smith, Citizen Smith, Citizen Smith.
Here's a man who would not take it anymore. A man who stood up against the scum, the dogs, the filth. Here is someone who stood up.
It's time for Citizen Smith.
Good morning on this Aloha Friday, thus, of course, the Hawaiian shirt. We try to keep it light on Fridays, but today we're not going to because we're going to be talking about a very serious topic. The choice to end your life. And joining me in studio is Jeff Kogan. He's the person behind End of Life Choices in Oregon. What's your official title, Jeff?
I'm the executive director.
There you go. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I didn't get the message about Aloha Friday.
That's
so,
okay.
Yeah.
The striped shirt looks very nice.
Oh, good.
So Jeff's got a very extensive background leading up to his current position. I'm going to just read your bio here that you sent to me because I find it quite interesting. It says, Jeff Kogan has been the executive director of End of Life Choice Oregon for 6 months, which is interesting. You just kind of get your feet wet with this very involved business. Before that, you were the executive director of Impact Northwest for 3.5 years. What was that?
That was a social service provider in Oregon.
Prior to that, you decided to run for office, first becoming a county commissioner. For which county?
Multnomah County, our county.
How long were you the commissioner?
I was the commissioner for 4 years.
Wow. And later, the chair of the county. You've also been a partner with City Commissioner Dan Saltzman and got the Children Levy passed, which is a local levy that spends $20 million per year to fund children's programs. You founded the Portland Pretzel Company, Oregon's first organic bakery, as a food cart at Portland Saturday Market, and you grew it into a nationally distributed specialty food company. So I assume you became quite rich?
No, I didn't.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Me too.
And on top of all that, you are an attorney who worked in San Francisco for Koblenz, Kahan, McCabe, and Breyer for 4 years.
Yep.
So you're a Bay Stater to find your way to the Northwest in the Rose City.
Yes, it's true.
Let's just ask and start with there. How did that happen?
Well, my wife and I met in law school, and we decided we were going to be lawyers for a little while, but after we paid off our student debts, we were going to travel the world. And so we worked as a lawyer for 4.5 years in San Francisco, and we paid off our debts, and then we traveled the world for a year.
Oh, very nice.
And after we got back from traveling the world, we didn't really want to live in San Francisco anymore because we had been freed of the big city realm. And so we wanted to move to a smaller town, and we considered Seattle, Eugene, and Portland. And Portland was the Goldilocks formula. It was just right for us. And so we moved here 30 years ago.
So you're a Portlander through and through at this point.
Yes.
And you got into local politics. What was the motivation behind becoming a county commissioner?
Well, when I worked as chief of staff for Dan Saltzman, he posited that kids could be helped if we only passed a tax levy to do it, because kids were not getting enough support previous to that. And he and I thought about this, and we got together a big group to do it, and we passed the levy, and that was a really exciting time for me. And I wanted to do more of that, and I ran for county commissioner after that.
And then you found your way into this organization, End of Life Choices Oregon, which provides direction, personal bedside support, required legal information, and necessary physicians to terminally ill Oregonians who are availing themselves of the Death with Dignity Act. Further, you put EOLCOR.
End of Life Choices Oregon.
Okay. Educates staff at medical centers, clinics, hospices, and the public regarding DWDA. We are also present at the time the terminally ill Oregonians choose to peacefully end their lives.
Yep.
I met you at a sports bar,
Mhm.
and when you told me that you were involved in this, I had to get you on the show, and thankfully you agreed.
Yep.
After deliberating a bit,
Yes.
you got back to me. And then when you decided to come on the show, I looked up the Death with Dignity Act and came to find out that in 1997 this was enacted in Oregon,
Mhm.
allowing terminally ill Oregonians to end their lives through voluntary self-administration of a lethal dose of medication
Mhm.
expressly prescribed by a physician for that purpose, as I'm reading online here. So I was curious to see that Measure 16 of 1994 established the U.S. state of Oregon Death with Dignity Act. So this was the first state
Oh, yes.
to do so.
The first state by almost 15 years.
I did not know that.
Well, it's true.
And Dr. Kevorkian found his way here.
Well, he didn't find his way here. He was operating in Michigan. He didn't come to Oregon.
Oh, he wasn't here.
No.
But he was involved.
He was it's not really what we're about because
You like to distance yourself
Yes.
from Dr. Kevorkian,
yes.
who passed away and
Yes.
actually spent time in prison
Yes.
for assisted suicides,
Yes.
as they called it.
Yes, and we don't believe in assisted suicide. We have medical aid in dying. So doctors, if a patient has less than 6 months to live, they contact our office and they say we have less than 6 months to live, and we do an intake with them, and we get the physician to treat them, but it's not suicide; it's them dying themselves.
Mhm. The first person to do so
Mhm.
was an Oregonian.
Yes,
Her name was,
I'm not sure.
well, it has Washington versus, I had the name here. It was a woman, I believe. Anyway, let's just talk about where we are at this point in the game.
Yes.
First of all, how many other states now are?
11.
There are 11.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the hold up from everybody embracing this?
Well, if there was a national law, everyone would embrace it, but there's not a national law. So it has to go through state legislatures. And state legislators are hesitant to do this because they don't want to be on the controversial side of things.
Controversial because perhaps we have some more religious organizations that are opposed to.
Yes.
Because it's against Christian belief to do this, right? It's a sin.
Well, it's against Catholics have interpreted it as against their beliefs. Protestants haven't.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that either. It's interesting. There's a little divide there.
Yes.
I watched a documentary, and I had to shut it off because it was a documentary about this. And it opens with a gentleman ending his life with two women assisting.
No.
And he was narrating as it was happening to him.
Oh, wow.
I shut it off. It was freaking me out so much. I could not watch it. It was
he
too heavy. It was too real.
Was he in Oregon?
I don't know. I honestly, I was like, I can't watch this. It's really hard to see somebody do that and then narrate how it's getting cold.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that's it. I can't.
Yeah.
You know.
I don't think we've had any people who narrate themselves.
Yeah. So the history of this, when after it started, and was so it officially was allowed in what year? I'm trying to backtrack here.
1997, because there was a lawsuit in 1994 when the first passed, but it officially was allowed in 1997.
And how many people in Oregon do you know have actually followed through on this?
Well, last year we consulted with 500 people, and 300 ultimately ended their lives.
So 6 months ago, you decided to get into this organization as the executive director.
Yes.
And you had no experience before that?
No, I didn't. But my dad, who was a doctor in Florida, had pancreatic cancer. And for the last 6 months of his life, my brother and I flew out every weekend. And over the last 3 months, he wanted to stop his suffering. But they didn't have a medical aid in dying law. So we had to watch him go through the brutal end of pancreatic cancer, and it was really, really brutal. And so I got it in my mind then that I wanted to work in an organization that, helped people end their lives. And then 4 years ago, I had a stroke, and I couldn't speak afterwards. And I got a lot of compassion for people who are suffering from, illnesses or injuries. And so as a result of that, I wanted to work for this organization or some organization like this. And I was working at Impact Northwest then. But about 9 months ago, I saw an ad for this organization hiring their first executive director.
Really?
I applied and I got it.
Well, it helps to have your background as a lawyer, county commissioner, the nonprofit you started or the act you got involved with the children.
Oh, the Children's Levy, yes.
Yeah. So you had this vast experience, and so you're involved. You've been in it for 6 months. What have you learned? What has enlightened you that you may not have known about? And have you actually been involved with some cases since you've been here?
Well, I don't get involved in cases. Our volunteers are primarily involved in cases. I'm running the organization, which means I raise money for it and I manage our staff. And the staff members consult with volunteers, but the volunteers do the cases.
I noted that in the write up there that you provide legal consultation or advice for the patients.
We're not a law firm, but we provide advice.
So do things become quite litigious when you decide to end your life?
We've never had a lawsuit filed in Oregon.
Really?
Nope.
That's solid of a decision.
Yes.
In the early court hearings and judgment.
Yep.
And all right, so take me to the process of somebody who's in a position where they're in such pain and terminally ill. Do they always have to be terminally ill? I mean, they just can't end their life because they're unhappy or feel sick, or they have to be terminally ill.
You have to have a doctor say you're going to die within the next 6 months, and then you're qualified for the Death with Dignity Act. And so if someone has a doctor say that to them, or if someone doesn't have a doctor say that to them and they just want to find out whether they're qualified, they call our person, and we have a couple people answer the phones. And if they call the people, we talk to them about, what illness they have and how they're living now. And if they don't have a doctor, we get them a doctor. And if the doctor says you don't have more than 6 months to live, we'll take them as a client.
Do people from other states come here that they can't do it in their state and for that purpose?
Well, we've never had someone come here, but I think maybe people have come here a couple years earlier and then we get them as their Oregon residents. But we've never had someone come here to do the act. And, the entire West Coast is, they have Death with Dignity Acts. Washington has a Death with Dignity Act, and California has a Death with Dignity Act. So the entire West Coast has Death with Dignity Acts.
It's a heavy thing. I can't imagine. I assume that if everybody, when it comes to pain, people have different levels of tolerance or acceptance. They have to put you on pain drugs usually to maintain some sort of, cohesion or, be coherent and keep your mind straight. But,
and that's another thing about the law. You have to have a sound mind. If you have dementia, you can't use this law.
A lot of people get Alzheimer's and gradually decay mentally, physically.
Yep. And they can't use this law at all.
So are you opposed to that?
I'm not really sure where I stand on that. I think when I came to the organization, I was opposed to it. I think people with Alzheimer's should be able to use the law. But as I've come to find out, people with Alzheimer's can't make a logical decision to end their life. And so that's why they can't use the law.
Some people are probably very young.
Oh, yes. ALS patients. We have a lot of ALS patients.
Lou Gehrig's disease?
Yeah, Lou Gehrig's disease. And some people have been like 25 and they've used our law.
Wow.
Yeah. Because they have terminal illnesses. They can't be alive for more than 6 months, and they use our law.
Justin, the executive producer who operates the board for this show as well. You were mentioning you had some friends that were in that kind of situation. They were in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Did they think about this or choose it?
I'm sure one friend of mine, she actually worked in the hospice industry. And so she spent years dealing with these patients and then herself got a terminal disease. Not once did she think about it.
No.
She didn't. She just wanted to go out on her own terms,
Yeah.
and when things happened, they would happen. And so she just lived every day to the fullest is what she did.
She must not have been in a lot of pain then, right?
At the end, she was in a lot of pain, but dealing with the hospice and knowing the process, she was okay with it.
I mean, only about 500 people think about using this law. A lot more than 500 people get terminal illnesses every year. So it's just a small subset of people who are in agonizing pain use this law. And hospices are maybe like 75% of our cases come through people who are in hospice.
Tell me what hospice is exactly for people may aren't familiar with.
It's a term for either facilities or home care for people who are going to be dying soon. If they have like 20 hospices around the state, and you can go to the facility and die there, or they come visit you at home and you can die there. And I think there are more than the total who've gone to the facility who die at home.
Why did Oregon initiate this to be the first state? What was it? Was it Kevorkian behind that, or what organization was behind that?
No, I mean, Oregonians have always been very compassionate, and this was just about people being compassionate. They don't want to have people suffer, and this is just about people came together in Oregon and they just created this law because they didn't want people to suffer.
Oregon tends to take a progressive angle on issues.
Yes, it does.
So I guess it should be no surprise that it was the first state.
Yes.
1994, when it was first brought up and put out there. So it was quite a long time, though, when you look at the history of medicine and terminal illness when it's diagnosed, that people have just been left out there to suffer and find their own end. Exactly. You could go to famous people like Ernest Hemingway, who I forget what disease he had, but
Pete Lee's on the phone. You have a phone call.
He was dying mentally. He might have Alzheimer's as well, but he shot himself with a shotgun.
Yep.
So that was pretty much the out people took.
Yeah. And we created this law, and 11 states have subsequently created this law because people don't want to shoot themselves. They want to die peacefully in the end.
The phone number is 503-744-7022, 744-7022, 503 area code. If you want to join in, you can call. It is live, this show, every day, Monday through Friday, 9 to 9:30. We do so now with caller lines open. Anybody who wants to participate has a question for Jeff Kogan regarding this, feel free to call. But right now, Pete Lee, one of our regular listeners and callers, joining. Also, vice chairman of the Democratic Party and very politically active. Pete, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind for Mr. Kogan?
So, a question for your guest. Thank you for being on the show for this very serious, somber, and important topic. One question that I'll ask, and I'll take the answer off the air, is in my EMT relicensure courses, we cover post and end-of-life care, which this is a part of. One thing that the instructor mentioned is that a substantial percentage of patients actually don't end up using the medication.
Yep.
And the main driver is basically a fear of dying with intractable pain. I want to know if this is still true and your thoughts on it. And thank you.
Yeah, it's still true. I mean, our doctors prescribe the medication to twice as many people as use the medication. And so the other people who have gotten the medication but didn't use it, they're just making sure they didn't get an unbearable pain, and they die of the disease, and they don't die of medical aid in dying.
So tell me how that works. You finally qualify for this medication, which is what? What is the medication?
DAMM. It's dioxin mixed with something.
Is it a pill?
It's a powder, and you can mix it with liquid, and you can drink it.
When did they come up with this medicine? Did they inject people with stuff before?
I don't think so.
No?
Maybe some other states have done that, but we've always had medication, not injections.
And what does it do? It just stops your heart?
It stops your heart. Yep.
So like a potassium raiser or something that causes potassium to spike, which causes heart attacks?
I don't know.
So it's painless?
Yes, it's painless.
How quickly does it happen?
In under an hour. Typically, it's under an hour.
So you slowly fade.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is heavy stuff. Oof.
But it is Aloha Friday, so there's some cheer there. Come on.
Thank you. And a lot of people get the medicine. It sits by their bedside,
mm-hmm.
and they hold off.
Yep. Because they get the medication because they're afraid of being in unbearable agony. And the people who don't do it are either not in unbearable agony or in unbearable agony, and then they die shortly thereafter.
Is it expensive to go through this process? Does the insurance company cover it? I mean, here's the practical side of things,
Yep.
right?
Well, our organization is all volunteers. We have 70 volunteers throughout the state of Oregon. But we're a nonprofit, so people can donate to us, but we don't charge for our services. The medicine, it's between $600 and $700, and some insurances pay for it.
$600 or $700 for that one little thing of powder.
Yep.
Is there only one company that makes it?
Yes.
Who is it?
I don't really know.
It's an interesting thing, right? A pharmaceutical company, which typically makes medicine to help cure people
Mm-hmm.
or deal with situations. This company actually came up with a powder
Mm-hmm.
to end your life.
Yep.
Takes 1 hour.
Yeah. That is true.
So where do you think things are headed from here? Is there changes on the horizon for this that people should be aware of? Are there more states going to be jumping on board? Are there people challenging it still?
Well, in Oregon, the Catholic Church has been challenging it, but they don't challenge it that much. But they challenge it in other states as opposed to in Oregon because it's the law here, and they don't beat their heads against the wall to deter the law.
Roe versus Wade is a law, and Texas found a way to overturn that.
Yeah, that's true.
So is there a way to overturn this? I think every law seems to be vulnerable after that.
Well, there was a ballot measure that passed by a large measure 25 years ago. And if anything, Oregon has gotten more progressive since then. So I don't think that there's a way to overturn the law in Oregon. But the church and others who are against this law are against the law in other states. And so only 11 states have passed this law. We passed it almost 25 years ago. So I think that's evidence of the opposition having powerful forces.
How many states or organizations in states have wanted to pass a law to allow this?
Well, there are 2 organizations that encourage other states to pass this law. There's Compassion and Choices and the Death with Dignity Center. And there's 11 states now, and they're active in like 10 others. And I think that there's going to be more to pass it in the next few years, but I don't think they'll get to a national status anytime soon.
Do they reach out to you for guidance?
Yes, they do, and they come to us with proposals to improve the Oregon law. For example, a couple of sessions ago, the Oregon legislature, when we first passed the law, it was 15 days from when you got the prescription to when you can use it, and they passed the exception to that unless there's an emergency, and in the emergency it can only be 48 hours. And so that's the exception that we have in our law now, and several other states have that in their law too. I think going forward in Oregon, we're considering a law that says it's currently only medical doctors or a doctor of osteopathy that can prescribe the medication. And we're considering a law that says nurse practitioners or physician's assistants can prescribe it if the law is changed. So that we'll consider that in the next session or two.
Oh, so it's around the corner.
Yes.
What you expect? Or anticipate?
I expect that we will pass it, actually.
So from the legal standpoint, being a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
what is it that the Christian church can use to defend their position to stop the right to choose to end your life?
Well, I mean, they support that we have a law that says thou shalt not murder. And if you medically aid in dying lives, you are, it doesn't make sense, but they say you're murdering them. And that's, I mean, you're not murdering them because they're committing suicide, assisted suicide. But they say that it's murdering them.
So they can prosecute the person in that state.
Well, they can't prosecute the person in Oregon because we have this law.
Right. But in these other states, that's how they,
Yes.
so they stand by the position that it's a criminal act
Yes.
of murder.
Yes.
That the person if somebody prescribed the drug itself,
Yes.
would be the doctor.
Yes.
And in the case of Dr. Kevorkian, going back to that,
Mm-hmm.
that he went to prison,
Yes,
because he was
because Michigan didn't have this law.
and that's where he did it.
Yes, Michigan. Yes.
They prosecuted him for murder.
Yes,
I think he spent something like 16 years in prison.
I think so. Yeah. That's why Michigan should have had this law.
Dr. Kevorkian, when did he pass away? Do you know?
I don't.
It was a few years.
Like in 2010 or something like that.
Did you follow him closely?
No. I was aware of his actions at the time, but I didn't
Mhm.
follow him closely.
I wanna look up. So, I'm pretty sure he was. I think it was Dr. Kevorkian that I looked up when I came across the Oregon thing
Mm-hmm.
and saw that he was here or something when that first case.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that.
I think he died in 2011.
Is that what it says?
Yeah. June 3rd, 2011. He was 83.
And he didn't. I don't think he chose to end his life. I think he just died naturally.
I think that's true.
And
We're called end of life choices. People, when they get to the end, they should make a choice. And not that many people choose medical aid in dying, but a lot of people do.
I mean, I don't see why they would not pass this in every state without a problem. But
Me too.
it just, we got a long ways to go still. Then
Mm-hmm. We do.
I mean, I'm a little surprised. This is my first, talking about this, knowing about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things you don't think about
Yep.
when you're a healthy individual.
Yep.
And not until I met you at the bar and you were sitting next to me did I even have this idea of interviewing somebody about it.
That's true.
And then, and now you think about it and you talk to people. I'm at a point in life where I see people passing away.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather had pancreatic cancer, and
No.
I wasn't around him when he passed. I was in Alaska and he was in Boston, and I don't know how much pain he went through, but
There was a lot of pain in pancreatic cancer. I can tell you that.
and I wonder if he would have been like choosing something like this when he had that.
Well, Massachusetts is one state that has this law.
I found the case I was looking for here in Oregon. It was a 54-year-old Portland woman, Janet Atkins, who went to a secluded park north of Detroit on June 4th, 1990, and climbed into the back of Kevorkian's rusted van. After Kevorkian inserted a needle into her arm, Atkins, who suffered from Alzheimer's, flipped a switch that released a lethal flow of drugs. She became the first of 130 people to die with his help
Mm.
from Portland. So there was this Oregon connection
Yeah, that's true.
to this woman. Ironically,
Yeah. But we didn't pass the law till 1997. That was 1990. That was 7 years before we passed the law.
it's just so ironic that this Portland woman
Yeah,
was the
yeah.
first.
I agree.
And then it comes back to Oregon. I wonder if that led to Oregon being the first.
Yeah, maybe too.
It seems too coincidental.
Mm-hmm.
What a way. Can you imagine that situation? He's in there doing that.
Yeah,
Wow. But that's how desperate this woman was.
exactly.
She flew to Detroit, left her. That's how desperate people get.
Exactly. And that's why we're here.
Wow, that's something. We'll keep an eye on the next session or two. That
If there are changes, I'll come on your show.
yes, feel free, and I look forward to. We can talk again. I mean, you're always welcome to come on the show if you want to discuss things. If anybody wants to reach out to your organization,
There's a website, End of Life Choices Oregon, and they can go to that website and got to the organization.
is there a phone number?
Yes, 503-922. I can't remember the last 4 numbers.
Oh, sorry to put you on the. Okay, one more time the website.
End of Life Choices Oregon. It's EOLC Oregon .org.
Okay. Thank you for joining me today on today's Aloha Friday.
Thank you.
Some people might reach out. Who knows who's listening?
Yep.
If they're from another state,
They can reach out to me.
can they come to the state? Then they have to become a resident, right?
Yeah, they have to be a resident. Yeah.
Mm. Thank you, Jeff Kogan, the executive director of.
End of Life Choices Oregon.
Thank you for joining me today. And that does it for today's show. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you for listening to this very difficult topic, but very important. Aloha Friday. I'll talk to you on Monday.